Keith Pompey is in Chicago from the Philadelphia Inquirer. He is covering the NBA draft combine out there, but a lot of things happening as that ping pong ball extravaganza is going to happen Tuesday night, the 16th, a very important night for the Philadelphia 76ers, Keith, as I guess they are anxiously awaiting to find out, because that is a really big night to find out what this offseason will look like.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, it's a huge night. I mean, basically what they'll do is after that night, they'll decide to see, who are the free agents they're going to identify and who are the players. Are they going to get the players that they really want to select, player or players that they really want to select in the draft?
Yeah, now you're looking at some of the draft prospects out there. More on that in a minute. But one of the things that made some news yesterday was your writing in the Inquirer that basically suggests the Sixers plan on offering Kyle Lowry a lucrative contract. And, of course, it seems that, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. This has been a terrible team. This is a nice player. But, there's a lot of split on whether Lowry is the right kind of player at this time for this organization. So, do you, number one, feel that that is the Sixers' plan regardless of where they end up in this lottery? And two, is this the right time for a guy like a 31-year-old Kyle Lowry?
I mean, I think if they get a Markelle Fultz, at number one, if they're able to get that, maybe that they'll decide to go in a different direction and use that money on another type of free agent. Maybe someone who can play the two, someone who can play the three, because the thing is, then all of a sudden it becomes a little overcrowded. Now, in regards to Kyle Lowry, and as I stated in that article, and also as the Sixers and most teams around the league, will say, the Sixers need to bring in a quality free agent, someone who can attract other free agents. Now, that's easier said than done. And the reason why I'm saying what I mean by that is you can go out there and say, oh, yeah, you know what? We're going to throw money at Steph Curry. We're going to throw money at LeBron James. We're going to throw money at Kevin Durant. We're going to throw money at Draymond Green. They're not coming here. They're just not. But whenever you get a guy who, like a Kyle Lowry from Philadelphia, a guy who has a great relationship with Brian Colangelo, guy, Villanova, the whole nine, and is interested in coming home, you have to take advantage of that, because he may not be there to get them whenever the Sixers think they're going to make a championship. He may not be there 5 years from now. However, he's the type of guy who will help them get to the next level. You know what I mean? So that's why I think the Sixers need to go after him, because he brings something to it. As good as we talk about Joel Embiid, he only played 31 games. As good as we talk about, and everyone says that Ben Simmons is going to be the next Magic Johnson, he has yet to play a game. Right now, you have a guy who is arguably one of the 10 best players in the league, right? Some people may say 10, the top 10, top 12. Arguably, some people may disagree with that. But at the same time, he's a three-time All-Star. If he comes here, he's able to recruit these other type of athletes that the Sixers need, because at this particular stage in his career, Joel Embiid can't do that. Ben Simmons can't do that. And that's the reason why I'm saying the Sixers need to go after Kyle Lowry.
Keith Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer. What kind of fit? I mean, there's been so much talk about, well, Ben Simmons can play point guard. We want him to play point guard. Wouldn't Kyle Lowry be the point guard if he was to sign in Philadelphia? Would they be signing him for?
I mean, he would be the point guard. He would be a point guard. What I mean by that, if you look at a lot of these teams nowadays, they have during clutch times or in the games, you have multiple ball handlers on the floor. I mean, just look at the Boston Celtics for an example. So Isaiah Thomas is listed as the starting point guard, but then whenever they get into a lot of their sets, he's coming off of screens and somebody else is walking the ball up or bringing the ball up. You know what I mean? So nowadays you need two. And then secondly, I think that until we realize what Ben Simmons can do as a point guard, and I'm not saying that he can't play it, but until we realize what he can do as a point guard, you can't just go in there saying, oh, we don't need a point guard. We already have one. No one knows. No one knows. And, the thing about Ben Simmons, a lot of his effectiveness is grabbing the defensive rebound, pushing tempo, right? Pushing tempo and getting into the, distributing the rock. We don't know what he's going to be like walking the ball up. You know what I mean? So, again, it's like kind of sort of they may be better off. I don't know. But they may say, like, we need to get another point guard with him, somebody who can walk the ball up, do whatever he can do, a guy who can play off of him, and see what Ben can do. We may decide that, hey, this Ben Simmons experiment at the point guard is not going to work. So what do we do then? We don't have a point guard. We don't have a top-notch point guard that we're going to go after. And this is something else that Brett Brown said. Brett Brown said before the final home game, his pregame press conference, he says, right now, Ben Simmons is our point guard, right? We don't know what it's going to be like in free agency, and we don't know what it's going to be like in the draft. But right here today, we were under the mindset that Ben Simmons is going to be our point guard. Right there, that was an out clause. That was something where they're saying, hey, if we can get somebody else, then maybe we can slide Ben to a different position. And then afterwards, afterwards you're asking people and you're saying, well, what if Ben Simmons doesn't work at point guard? What do you do with him? They said, well, then we'll move him to the 3. So believe me, if they can get a player the caliber of Kyle Lowry, I don't think that Ben Simmons will be, having the ball in his hands at all, all the time.
Keith Pompey with us, talking Sixers basketball and the Kyle Lowry topic that's come up in the last couple of days. So, Keith, how much stock do you put into the fact that Brian Colangelo signed Lowry in Toronto? How much credence or stock do you put into the argument, well, Colangelo wants to bring him in because then that validates, look, this is one of my guys?
No, I don't think it's I don't think it's one of those, like, saying it's one of my guys. I think he saw something in in Kyle for him to trade for him when he was in Toronto. Kyle was like, he was a kind of like a backup, so to speak, point guard in Toronto. He started some games, but, he saw something in him and he believed in him. And then, we got to a point in regards to my guy, I will say that they have a great relationship, but I don't think it's one of those where I'm sticking my chest out saying, hey, I'm bringing my guy in here. You know what I mean? It's not one of those. I just think that he sees something in him. And the fact that, like I said, you have to get a big name free agent. You just have to, when you build teams, because that will enable other free agents to come. Now, granted, that's the reason why they're interested in Kyle Lowry, because they know he's a guy who, possibly wants to come here.
And then I guess some people, if you went to Villanova, you know about Kyle Lowry, but maybe for the rest of our listeners, what kind of character does he bring to the table? And do you think Philadelphia fans and the players would welcome him and embrace him? What kind of character does he bring if he were to come here?
I've known Kyle since he was in the 12th grade. My cousin played high school ball with him. My cousin went to college with him. They're good friends. Stuff like that. So, I've Kyle is the type of person, he's a guarded guy. If he doesn't know you, he doesn't open up to you. He doesn't open up to his world. He keeps to himself, but, he's a gritty guy. He's a competitor, and some people may say, hey, I like Kyle Lowry. Some people say I don't like Kyle Lowry, but, I don't think that, I just think a lot of people don't get to know him. And I will say that, there were things that he did, when he was younger in his career, and people kind of like, wow, he did that. And it wasn't really anything malicious or nothing like that. It was just his personality. But I will say that he's improved. I take him in a heartbeat. And I would even take him, some people saying he's 31 years old. To me, that's not a concern at all.
We're talking with Keith Pompey, and, according to Keith, the Sixers could make a lucrative deal towards him. And of course, Keith, you probably understand the other side. There's that group out there that says, well, look, this team is young. They got draft picks. What are you going with a 31-year-old guy for? And a guy who, just said he wants a ring, right? Wasn't that what his comment was? His intentions are to find a team with a ring. So if he signs with the Sixers, how much validity does that give them as a franchise?
How much validity does it give? I mean, here's the thing. Let's go back to he wants a ring.
Right.
I mean, of course he wants a ring. Everyone wants a ring.
Sure.
But there's only 2 teams that are going to give him a ring. He can go to Cleveland, and take less money, right? He can go to Golden State. They're not going to take him because they have Steph Curry, unless he'll take less money to come off the bench, right? He could try to go to San Antonio, but San Antonio will probably take Chris Paul over him. And if he goes there, he's not going to make money. So let's think about it now. So I can go there and I can make, take a pay cut, so to speak, or I can go to Philadelphia and I could make $152 million if they give me a 4-year deal. Because the Sixers don't have to give him a 4-year deal. He doesn't have to accept one.
Right.
So everyone wants to win a championship, but at the end of the day, how many times do you hear guys saying, even though they're multimillionaires, they always say, I had to feed my family. It was a business decision. So, you expect them to say that because that's the right thing to say. But if that's the case, and if all things were equal, pointing out the things we just stated, he would be better off staying where he is in Toronto.
Yeah. Well, I guess my question is pointed towards, here's a high profile player, and he says, I want a ring would be my, you mentioned a handful of guys that wouldn't consider the Sixers. Why should we consider a guy who's of this echelon would consider the Sixers if a ring is in the conversation? And I guess that kind of points to the Villanova and the Colangelo and all that stuff. Is that a strong enough tie to say, you know what? I'm not going to go to a team that is in the championship conversation, and money, yes, is obviously a driving force for me.
Well, here's the part of that. Maybe if you take the Villanova thing out of it,
Mm-hmm.
and you take his relationship with Brian Colangelo out of it. The thing is, the Sixers potentially, the Sixers will be a very good team in a couple of seasons. You know what I mean? They won 28 games this year, and and Embiid only played 31 games. Ben Simmons did not play. You know what I mean? They have a bunch of draft picks. Brett Brown coaches hard. All the guys in the league, whenever you talk to them, they always praise Brett Brown for his coaching, and they always praise the Sixers for not quitting. You know what I mean? So if you're a player and you look at that and you're saying, wow, they got a guy who basically is going to be an all-star possibly next year through the rest of his career, talking about Embiid. And then you have a guy like Ben Simmons who is just a freak of nature. You know what I mean? So those are the things where people can say, you know what, maybe I can go here and be a part of the puzzle.
Keith Pompey is with us, and he's at the NBA Combine, too. So while you're out there, I know the Sixers met with Markelle Fultz, and we talked about him a little bit, a point guard as well. What do you see from him? I mean, would he be, if you have the number one pick, is our team starting to say this is the guy?
Man, you'll be, in my personal opinion, you'll be foolish not to take him with the number one pick. I mean, it's just that he can do a lot of different things. Right now, if you're the Sixers, the Sixers' biggest need right now is a shooter. They need someone to shoot. Monk and Markelle Fultz are the best two shooters. But he's a better, all-around player than Malik Monk. Now, Malik Monk is 6'3", Fultz is 6'4", but Fultz is a point guard. He can play off the ball. You know what I mean? He's a good shooter, like I pointed out before. So right there, he kind of checks all the boxes, or Brett Brown likes to say ticks all the boxes that the Sixers want. So I think that you would have to go after him. Now, again, if you don't get the first pick, and, he's probably going to come off the board if anybody besides Boston drafts him, and then it gets a little tricky because, you may say, well, may have to, go with someone, like someone else may entice me. But if you have the first pick, I think the Sixers have to go after this guy.
Hey, Keith, before we let you go, where do you stand on Lonzo Ball and the Sixers? Would they be interested in Lonzo Ball and all that comes with him?
That's a kind of like a tough situation, and I don't even really want to pile on the pot. I mean, I think that he might be a little aggressive. He might be a little, when it comes down to things, he's I guess he's saying things that you would think he would regret, but he's not. Yeah. And it will be one of those things where I guess if the Sixers would go that way, they would have to have a long conversation with him. But it's unfortunate because there was a point in time in the beginning of the college season when everyone was just talking about his son's ability. I would watch UCLA games late at night, and I would say, wow, this guy is going to be a pretty good player. I really like his game. And now it's like no one's talking about the game. They're talking about the sneakers. They're talking about the father saying that he can destroy, Jordan one-on-one. And I think it's just, it's a shame that, the focus is no longer on the kid.
Hey, Keith, real quick, I know the draft last year, though, Forkin Korkmaz, the 26 overall pick, kind of a forgotten man. We know the Sixers like these stash guys, but they went over to take a look at him, and he has turned out to be he was just named the best young player over there at the Basketball Champions League. I know you wrote about him, and the Sixers are taking a good look at him. So another guy that has kind of entered the equation.
Yeah, he entered the equation, and it's funny that you're talking about him because I was working on a story about him right now. It's one of those things where he really wants to join the Sixers next season. However, he has 2 years left on his buyout, and with that, it's kind of like a tricky buyout that he probably won't be able to get out of. Like he can't afford to get out of it. But Gordon, talking to people, the Sixers also feel like it would be best for him if he just stayed another year over there. He can shoot the ball really well. The only problem with him is, he's like 6'8", 190 pounds. So, in the NBA at this particular stage of his career, he would just get pushed around, and get pushed around a lot.
Right.
So it's one of those things where, I believe that the Sixers would love for him to stay another year, get a little stronger, kind of like what Dario Saric did. I mean, Dario, he packed on 20 pounds of muscles within his 2 years over in Turkey after the Sixers drafted him. So it's one of those things where he can do the same, and then he'll be able to come and help the team, not this upcoming season, but, possibly the following one.
And keep in mind, he is just 19 years old. Keith Pompey, he is in Chicago at the NBA Combine, checking out all the prospects. The Sixers will find out their fate on Tuesday night. And, Keith, we appreciate the time as always, pal. Thanks so much.
Thanks, man.